Streaming, start recording. All right. Streaming, recording, we're ready. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryan Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvisha Vahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Good. Welcome to you all, and welcome to all of you attending this online. We have lots of great questions. So last week I wasn't able to conduct this satsang, so we'll take questions both from last week and this week, also questions from our local students. We'll start here. We have a question from Vidya Sagar, who lives in Vancouver, Canada. He asks, we are told that human form is considered the best for spiritual sadhana. Best? Not best. The only, right? Only as a human being. It's not best. Actually, this is a loose reference. We are told that. This is a loose reference to one of my favorite verses in Shankaracharya's Viveka Chudamani. Durlabham trayam eva etat. There are three things that are very rare in life. Deva, anugraha, hetukam. They're so rare that you only get them with God's grace. Those three things are manushyatvam, birth as a human being. Mumukshutvam, desire for spiritual growth, and Mahapurusha, samshrayaha, access to a proper teacher. So we've all hit the jackpot. 3 out of 3 is not bad. All right. So, but not best. The only lifetime in which you can pursue spiritual growth is as a human being. Vidyasagar, his question, I know I haven't achieved my full potential in this verse, in this life, and will not finish by the time I leave. And somehow the whole message didn't come across. When I looked at the rest of the message upstairs, he said, what can I, if I have to remember now, what can I do to make sure that I'm born in my next life as a human being so I can pick up the thread? And according to the doctrine of karma, there's nothing you can do to guarantee that what your next birth will or will not be. Nothing. Because your next birth is determined not only by your karmas from this life. Your next birth is determined by your karmas of every prior birth, of every prior life. So even though you can really work hard in this life, there's nothing you can do about the karmas from all your past lives. So there's no way at all to guarantee your next life as a human being, or even your next life as not a cockroach or something like that. So the point is, and the point that Shankaracharya was making, is that this is it. The time for effort is now, in this lifetime. Okay. Next question from Dave. Dave lives in London. Dave is rather long. I'm going to just pick out a couple of lines. He begins, I am in love with a woman, but she rejected me. What a common story. Even though spiritual growth is the most important thing, emotional support and intimacy are also very important in life. Absolutely correct. So how can we balance these things so we won't get hurt so much? You may not like this answer. As long as you're seeking balance, you will get hurt. The solution is not balance. Already you're living a life of balance. Already all of you All of you here in this room and all of you watching online, you already are trying to have a balance in life. You're already simultaneously pursuing spiritual growth while you also are engaged in worldly activities, including falling in love and all of that, and which is all of it good. It's good that you're seeking a partner in life. It's also good that you're seeking spiritual growth. The problem is if you're seeking balance, what did we just say? Human life is this rare opportunity. And what I mean to say is this. If spiritual growth is let me put it like this. Suppose you're trying to live a balanced life. You want to do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of that. That turns out to be a lousy strategy if you really want to gain moksha. If you want to get moksha, you put spiritual growth as your number one priority and everything else below that. So it means it doesn't mean that you don't seek worldly goals, but it's that all worldly goals collectively are in second place. When you make moksha your first goal is when you can make progress on that spiritual path. So this idea of balance is not misplaced, but it's misunderstood. It's not that moksha, it's not that spiritual growth is one among many activities, but rather that spiritual growth is your first priority, and then all the other activities are included in your life, but in a secondary level of importance. Good. Next question from Arun, who lives in Bangalore. There's a popular belief in this part of the world, which means Hindu India, that associated with a Mahatma, meaning an enlightened person, a saint, can alter your karma in this life. So there were many people had that feeling very strongly about Satya Sai Baba, who came from that part of the country. That if you had his blessings, that your karmas could be changed. According to the doctrine of karma, that's not possible. If you understand the doctrine of karma very properly, which means take some effort. It's fairly complex. It's all based on cause and effect, which means you can understand it because you can understand cause and effect. And what the doctrine of karma basically says is that you cause karmas and you reap the effects. Now, that means no one can alter your karma. The only one who can alter your karma is you. You are the agent of action. You are the one to receive the results of those actions. However, you, as an agent of action, could go and sit at the feet of Satya Sai Baba or anyone that you can connect to and be blessed, not by some special blessings. You see these silly pictures where the wise man holds up his hand, and you see this in the Hindi movies, and his beam of light comes out of the hand, and that's the stuff of Hindi movies. That's not how the blessings of an enlightened person works. The primary blessings of an enlightened person is through what they teach. Is it not so? The primary way that you're blessed by being in the presence of an enlightened saint is by what they teach you. Through their teachings, you change your behavior, you change your thinking, and in that way, your karmas get changed. Indirectly. Not that the saint changes your karmas, but the saint teaches you through the extra wisdom you now have, your life changes and your karmas therefore change. Okay, next question from Neil, who lives in North Carolina. Neil says, For me, I must confess that the Mahavakya, sarvam khalvidam brahma, is a matter of belief. Sarvam khalvidam brahma, sarvam kalu, idam, sarvam idam, all this, kalu, indeed, is Brahman. He says, all this is a matter of belief. I'm at a point in my spiritual journey where I have faith pending verification regarding this Mahavakya. Problem is, how do I go from faith to direct personal verification and realization? This, I see very often that in the question, the problem is actually found, the answer to the question is found in the question itself. In this case, Neil has incorrectly said that sarvam khalvidam brahma is a Mahavakya. It's not. We need to understand what is a Mahavakya. When you understand what is a Mahavakya, then you'll understand where personal realization comes from. In technical terms, sarvam khalvidam brahma is not a Mahavakya. It's called Arthavada, and I don't want to bore you with all this technical stuff. Mahavakya is a statement that reveals the identity between you and Brahman. Statements like I am Atma, Brahma. This self is Brahman. Tattvamasi. You are that Brahman. Aham Brahmasmi. I am that Brahman. And the one that's less quoted, Prajnanam Brahma. Prajnanam, consciousness. The consciousness that's present in your experience right this moment is Brahman. So notice that in each case, the Mahavakya is really revealing the identity between your true nature and ultimate reality. You are not separate from that ultimate reality, that highest reality we call Brahman. Now, going back to the statement, sarvam khalvidam brahma comes in Chandogya Upanishad. It's a very important teaching. It's a crucial teaching, but it's not a Mahavakya. Why? All sarvam idam, all this, Kalu, indeed, is Brahman. All this is Brahman. Where are you? Doesn't make reference to you. If it doesn't make reference to you, it's not a Mahavakya. And for that reason, you can't personally verify it. He's saying, how do I go from faith to personal verification and realization? You can only personally realize what is personal. This is an impersonal statement. All this is Brahman. That's a fact to be understood. But it's not a fact that you can verify in terms of your own experience. Tattvamasi is a fact that is a teaching that you can verify in terms of your own experience. But sarvam khalvidam brahma, all this is Brahman, is an impersonal statement. It's talking about Brahman being the underlying reality because of which the universe exists. It's actually in the context. If you go look up the context in the Chandogya Upanishad, you'll find that the context is actually Saguna Brahman, talking about Ishvara. We need not discuss that further here, but if you're interested, you can look that up. It's not talking about you. It's not a Mahavakya. That statement cannot be personally verified. What can be personally verified are Mahavakyas. You are that. And please don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that statement is less important. It's crucial, leading you up to the final step. Okay, enough said. Then, question from Ravi. Ravi lives in Chicago. Definition of consciousness is that by which things in the mind are known. That's part of the definition of consciousness. It's an incomplete definition of consciousness. That by which things in the mind are known is an incomplete definition of consciousness. If that is so, then without the consciousness, wouldn't the mind simply be unknown? It would be like it would just still produce thoughts, produce information, and do all of these things. No. And so here's it's like, who is it? Was the Western philosopher Descartes, who's famous for this idea called ghost in the machine. It's very, very vivid what that suggests. Consciousness is like the ghost in the machine. Consciousness is not like a ghost. By the way, modern philosophers long ago threw out Descartes' ideas. they were pretty significant when he lived, I think 500 years ago, or 400, I forget. Anyway, from today's standpoint, they're very archaic and they're not accepted. So there is no such thing as a ghost in the machine. It's not that consciousness is stuck inside of you, keeping an eye on what happens in your body and mind. That's a ghost in the machine. And this confusion comes due to the incomplete definition of consciousness. To say that consciousness is the revealer of the activities of your mind is part of the definition. In fact, it's the first part of the definition, and it's missing out on the latter parts of the definition. When we go further, it's a great starting point to say that consciousness, let's start with this statement. Your true nature is the consciousness by which this experience is known. That's a great starting point. Your consciousness is that by which this experience right now is known to you. This experience takes place in your mind, and whatever happens in your mind is known to you. All of that is fine, but it's just a starting point. The next step is, okay, what are you observing? So we're talking about consciousness as the observer. What is being observed? And here, the discussion gets very heavy, very fast. And I'm just going to give you just a little glimpse of that. Remember, this is Advaita Vedanta? Advaita, non-dual. We got a problem with this observer and observed, right? It's a great place to start, but it's not where we end. So we start in duality. We start with our experience. Experience, by definition, is all in the realm of duality. Experiencer, experienced. Observer, observed. But then we go further and further and further. We go through a process of philosophically deconstructing that which is observed. This is where it gets heavy. We're not going to go into all of that right now. But let's just to give you the little peek at how this gets resolved. The thoughts that you're observing, what are they made of? So you are the observer of thoughts in your mind. What are those thoughts made of? Vedanta's analysis of thoughts is thoughts are consciousness with a particular form. Right now you see me. I am present in your mind. I am present in your mind how? As consciousness with the form of Swami Tadatmananda. So notice, as soon as you take that perspective, this whole observer-observed thing goes out the window. And this is one of this would be the topic for hours and hours of discussion, so let me bring this to a close just by suggesting this. The teachings of Advaita Vedanta work in stages, like stepping stones. You've heard me give this metaphor, stepping stones across a river. The first stepping stone in this case is I am the observer of my thoughts. Then there are more stepping stones ahead. That first stepping stone is still solidly in the realm of duality. But in order to go to the next stepping stone, you have to leave the prior one behind. And that's a challenge for many students of Advaita Vedanta. Because it's like we say, you are the observer of your thoughts. Then we say, no, you're not. That's what I'm describing. That's stepping stones. You are the observer of your mind. No, you're not. But that's how these teachings work. We have to start someplace. And we start with our experience. Experience is absolutely in the realm of duality. We start there. But as we proceed, and there are many more stepping stones, not just one or two, as we proceed, this duality gets dissolved, and duality gets dissolved, which means the mind gets deconstructed, the body gets deconstructed, the world gets deconstructed. All that remains is pure consciousness. But that's only after going across many such stepping stones. Okay, I'll take a couple more questions here. Next from Shankar, who lives in Hyderabad. Question: what exactly happens in meditation? Suppose hypothetically, by following the steps for meditation, we achieve absolute concentration. Not hypothetically. Learn to do it. It's not a big deal. If you meditate an hour a day, you can, before long, you'll be able to achieve that complete concentration. If you don't meditate an hour a day, forget it. If you put some effort into it, you'll get there. But then, do we need to make the mind and intellect still or shut them off so that self-realization happens automatically? Meditation doesn't make you realized. Meditation controls your mind. You can make your mind one-pointed. Patanjali calls it chitta ekagrata, when your entire mental focus rests upon one and one thing only in your mind, what he calls alambana, your object of meditation. So when you make your mind concentrated, wonderful. For an hour long, you're in meditation, your mind is concentrated, and then meditation is over, and then your mind is no longer concentrated. Where does enlightenment fit into that picture? It doesn't. Talking about controlling your mind. Let's be very clear. Enlightenment is not a matter of controlling your mind, because when will your mind be perfectly controlled? When will your mind be perfect? Your mind will never be perfect. We're human beings. It's like, I'll make a bad joke. Your mind will be perfect when you can make your body perfect. How's that? If you think you can make your body perfect, go for it. And along the way, maybe you can work on your mind. That's all silliness. Mind is what it is. Body is what it is. Of course, we need a healthy body to live our lives. We need a well-trained mind, especially for spiritual practice, which is why meditation is so crucial. But meditation is crucial as preparation for enlightenment. You need a healthy body, you need a healthy mind. Meditation is indispensable, not as a means for enlightenment, but as preparation for enlightenment. Enlightenment means what? Shankara said so clearly, jnanam eva moksha. According to this whole tradition of Advaita Vedanta, you suffer in life because you have not recognized your true nature, what we loosely call your true divine nature, but what Shankara calls Satchidananda Atma, your essential self as pure, unborn, uncreated, unchanging consciousness. when you discover your true nature, that suffering will go away. So the problem then is that you don't recognize your true nature. It's said that your true nature is covered, metaphorically covered, by a veil of ignorance. Therefore, enlightenment is removing that metaphoric veil of ignorance so that you can discover your true nature, your already existent true nature. You are already that. Going back to the Mahavakya, Tattvamasi, all the Mahavakyas are in the present tense. It doesn't say you will become that. Tattvamasi says you already are that, but you don't get it, which is why we have these teachings of Vedanta. But in order for this practice, the teachings of Vedanta are meant to support your practice of self-inquiry, Atma-vichara, and that practice of self-inquiry can only be successful if your mind is properly prepared, therefore the need for meditation. Okay, take another question here, then we'll see if any of you have a question. This from Prashanto, who lives in Bangladesh. Oh, just like the other question. Having a dilemma between having ambition in life, but knowing at the same time that nothing I accomplish will bring permanent peace and happiness. So my question is how to strike a balance. Right back. How to strike a balance between worldly ambition and discovering the self. So, if you want balance in life, do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Fine. Then you'll have a little bit of relief from suffering. A life of balance will give you a little bit of everything, including a little bit of relief from suffering. If what you want is abiding peace and contentment, you won't get there by doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Just to summarize my discussion, my answer before. When you make spiritual growth your first priority in life, and allow all the other activities in life to continue, but as secondary goals. That's not balance, right? That's a clear set of priorities. So the way to overcome suffering is not through a balanced life, but instead, shall we say, having clear priorities, making spiritual growth your first priority. Okay, do we have any questions here? Okay, we'll start here. You'll need the microphone, and I need to turn the microphone on. And I need, thank you. I need to turn it on here.
Hi, Swamiji.
Yeah, thank you. Good.
My question relates to your discourse.
Oh, what happened to that one away? What happened there? Thank you. Just wait just a moment. It looks like the stream is down. Something we've not had before. Did you log out and back in? Okay. And can you just check the stream? Vinay is also checking. Are we on or not? I have a black screen here. Just wait just one moment. We'll see if we need to relaunch the stream. Okay. It's going? Okay. So I'm not, okay. Just keep an eye on it and make sure it continues, because what I have here is now static. So we're not sure. Okay, we'll take your, so right now, do we have the room view? Okay, and let me know if it goes away. Thank you. Okay, please, your question.
Yes, Swamiji, my question relates to the discourse you had yesterday about Vedanta, recognition, getting it, and the big picture. Mm-hmm. My question is getting the big picture like getting absolute zero or going to infinity. We never get it, but we can really get an approximation of the big picture.
You're giving us an example from science.
Yeah.
We're not talking about science. We're talking about self-inquiry.
Yeah.
So it's completely unlike that,
Yeah.
right? So in science, will you ever know everything?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Ask any scientist.
Yeah.
There's, you peeling an onion with an infinite number of layers. You just go deeper, deeper, deeper. So this is not science.
Yeah.
So getting the big picture means a process of self-inquiry that culminates with the discovery of your true nature as pure consciousness.
Yeah. Follow-up question is: people say you can never get moksha in your life, only after you in the next life or ever
Sure,
after
that's
you
what's
get
taught by
It's,
almost every religion in the world.
Yeah.
And it's also taught by Advaita,
Yeah.
Madhva's teachings, also taught by Ramanuja, Acharya, by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by all of these other traditions, which is why we're studying Advaita Vedanta.
Okay.
The huge difference is that Advaita Vedanta is unique in giving you moksha now. All the other traditions have to do with when you're dead. And I'm sorry to be a little sarcastic about this. If you want moksha when you're dead, you need not study Advaita Vedanta. If you want freedom from suffering here and now, that's the goal of Advaita Vedanta.
Thank you.
Okay. Now you had a question, please. Oh, and I have to remember to put this back.
Swamiji, yes, you spoke about ahimsa, practicing ahimsa to yourself. And yesterday, what I understood, you spoke about if people get lost in the competition and the stress, then you lose the fun in a board game.
Right.
How can this person, a family in Boston asked me, because they didn't want to reveal their identity, ask you this question about their daughter. If this can be applied to the daughter, what would you say? She was a valedictorian in a school, but she got rejected, very high SAT scores, but she got rejected from all the Ivy League.
Can you make the question really
so she got rejected from the Ivy League schools, and then her friends made fun of her, ridiculing her, mocking her. Okay. So she got kind of a brain fog. The parents say she can't focus, she can't concentrate, they say.
Right.
So, but she does listen to your lectures.
What is the question?
Ahimsa, practicing ahimsa can, on oneself, like you don't, because she bashed herself up. And
I'm still not getting the question.
I don't know I thought this would be the question in practicing ahimsa to yourself. Can she do that? Where she doesn't hurt herself?
So how to practice question? If your friends are putting you down, what kind of friends are those? Go find some new friends. I mean, we have a responsibility. Let me address it like this.
Yeah.
And then I'll take your question and back. If you're being emotionally abused, it's up to you to remove yourself from that abusive situation. I mean, that's the practice of ahimsa with regard to you. So if she's being abused emotionally by her friends and it's pulling her down, making her depressed, then it's up to her to change her lifestyle, change her friends, it's up to her. Okay, there's a question in back.
This is a follow-up to your last answer to the online question about prioritizing spiritual growth.
Yes.
It's not a question, more of a seeking.
Better to have a question. That makes it easier for me to respond.
Yeah.
Make it as clear as you can.
Of course, biasing for action is the most difficult thing. It's very easy to keep watching YouTube videos, doing theory and understanding theory. You also said we are the agents of action. What are some of the examples from your life of accountability and commitment that you had in your journey, what actions that aligned with those values that rest of us can learn
Good.
from.
Okay. And that really points to a very simple fundamental principle in life. And that is, and going back to this issue of balance, I think this answer will be helpful. And that is, we always seek what we think is most important in life. Very obvious principle, but with tremendous consequences. We seek whatever we consider to be valuable. What is valuable to you? Now set yourself aside, look at our culture. What is valuable in modern culture? All kinds of nonsense is valuable. When you think of how much time kids spend scrolling on their phones, that's valuable to them. When you think of how much time young women spend in the mirror putting on makeup, that's valuable to them. When you think of how much effort men put into building their careers and being powerful and being in command, that's what's valuable to them. So the point I'm making is there's lots of things that people pursue with great intensity because they consider those pursuits valuable, whereas from a spiritual perspective, they're not valuable. In fact, in some cases, less than valuable. So, you asked in terms of my own life. The reason I'm sitting here before you today is I've simply done what anyone else does. I continually pursued what I thought was most valuable. So as a young man, I discovered that career and family and all the usual things wasn't as valuable as I thought, so I started meditating and practicing yoga. Then I discovered Advaita Vedanta, and then instead of practicing so much, and I used to do yogasanas and other things in those days, so then that kind of got left behind, and now I'm focused more on Advaita Vedanta. And from different teachers, then I met my guru, and then, oh, that's what's most valuable. So then the focus goes there. Most valuable because it was showing me to find what we've discussed several times, perfect peace and contentment, something that doesn't come and go, something beyond what you can achieve in the world. And it was just one step after another. That step led me to leave my profession behind and become a full-time student. Then years later, as a ordained sannyasi, then one thing to another. Even now teaching is part of that same process. Why am I teaching? Because it allows me, I'm teaching for obvious reason, to serve a community. But from a personal standpoint, teaching allows me to continue to pursue what I find most valuable. So, they say never say in a nutshell. I was about to say in a nutshell. And that statement is considered weak because what's inside a nutshell? Maybe that's not such a great expression. So better to say, speaking concisely, when you discover that the most valuable thing is what's achieved through spiritual growth, that will mold your behavior and lead to a life of continued spiritual growth. Okay, let me take some more questions here, and then we'll wind things down. All right, next question here from Juan. Where does Juan live? Okay, Juan says, constantly pinging my awareness back to Aham Brahmasmi has left me navigating constant waves of bhava, emotions, emotional ups and downs. These moments cause my emotions to spike, and I sometimes find myself moved to tears. I'd love your guidance how to somewhat base out these emotional spikes. I think what Juan is engaged in is seeking an experience that you have when you absorb your mind in teachings like Aham Brahmasmi. So he says, continuously pinging my awareness back to Aham Brahmasmi. First of all, he doesn't mean awareness. Awareness means consciousness. You don't ping consciousness. You don't do anything with consciousness. So he means mind, attention. So pinging, let us paraphrase. Pinging my awareness means directing my attention, right? I'm pretty sure that's what he means. So continuously bringing my attention back again and again to Aham Brahmasmi leaves me with these up and down emotional waves. And the reason is that it's all a matter of experience. To bring your attention back to Aham Brahmasmi is seeking an experience that comes when you reflect on the vastness of that statement. My gosh, if you get it a little bit, it just fills you with awe and wonder and elevates you emotionally. Some of the many experiences you can have in meditation. When you become a skillful meditator, you can have all kinds of blissful, amazing experiences in meditation, including by pinging your awareness back to Aham Brahmasmi, by having kinds of meditative experiences based on teachings like Aham Brahmasmi. And he says, they come and go as waves, because experiences come and go. Emotional experiences come and go. Meditative experiences come and go. Mystical experiences come and go, correct? That's the nature of the mind. The nature of the mind is that it's constantly changing. Whatever experience you have, no matter how powerful, how mystical, how wonderful, how spiritual that experience is, it's excellent, it's wonderful, but it's still an experience, which means it will come and go. This reminds me of when I was a kid in the 1960s. We used drugs, seeking these experiences. So you take some LSD and you have these amazing experiences. It lasts about I don't know, 12 hours or so, and then it's over. Then what? Then that's all it is. It comes and goes. So the goal then, in Advaita Vedanta, let's be very clear, the goal is not a transient experience. Meditative experiences are transient. Even so-called mystical experiences. Suppose in bhakti, suppose in your prayer and devotion, you have an image of God or goddess. That's an experience, right? Comes and goes. So the goal then in Advaita Vedanta is not a transient experience, but rather to abide in the knowledge of your true nature as Satchidananda Atma. And for the sake of abiding in that knowledge, that so-called veil of ignorance has to be removed. So there's a lot of self-inquiry involved in this in this journey of spiritual growth, all of which is guided by these teachings of Advaita Vedanta. I'll just take a couple more questions here, but just to share my back in those 1960s, I made reference to. At that time, my guru Puja Swami Tadatmananda was living in a grass hut on the banks of the Ganga in Rishikesh, and this is when all the hippies started coming to India, and they learned about this Swami who was in a grass hut on the banks of the Ganga who spoke English. Because most of the Swamis spoke Hindi. And these hippies from Europe and America, they couldn't follow Hindi, he spoke English. So they would end up at his hut, and he would teach them. And he, years later when I was a student, he told us how not that he was frustrated, but it seemed like his teachings were useless in his estimation, because all these hippies were seeking the next experience. So like they had already had the experience of marijuana, they already had the experience of peyote, they already had the experience of LSD, mescaline, all these things. Now they want to have spiritual experiences. So they go to India. And in order to have a spiritual experience, then you have to get it, like you have to get drugs from someplace. So you have to get these spiritual experiences from a wise man. And he was the prototypical wise man sitting in his hut on the banks of the Ganga. You can see the hazard when spiritual growth degenerates into experience seeking. Instead of seeking worldly experience, instead of seeking drug experiences, you're now seeking spiritual experiences. That's not spiritual growth. Okay. Next question from Archana, who lives in Canada. Archana asks, is it traditionally prohibited to chant Vedic mantras like the Mahamrityunjaya mantra or Om Namah Shivaya independently or in Satsang without first receiving them through a guru or getting formal initiation diksha? Is it traditionally prohibited? And it depends on the authority you ask. So if you ask an ultra-Orthodox Brahmin priest in some South Indian village, you're going to get one answer. And the first answer is, Archana is female by gender. Finished. Because traditionally, females and non-Dwijas, twice-borns, are prohibited from Vedic study. Mahamrityunjaya mantra and Om Namah Shivaya both come from the Yajurveda. So if you are not a Brahmana, Vaishya, or Kshatriya, forget it. You are prohibited from these mantras. So that's when you ask that Orthodox Brahmin priest. If you go and ask, if you ask someone like Swami Tadatmananda, he'll tell you that these traditions are really outdated and have zero validity in modern times. They may have had some purpose 2,000 years ago. They obviously don't have any purpose whatsoever today. So all such restrictions are unnecessary. So with regard to chanting Vedic mantras like Mahamrityunjaya mantra and even Om Namah Shivaya is a Vedic mantra. It comes from Yajurveda. Initiation is not required. Diksha is not required. These mantras are prayers. I don't get it. You have to be qualified to recite a prayer? First of all, you have to be a twice-born and not a woman to recite a certain prayer. That just doesn't make any sense whatsoever in modern times. So if when you ask traditionally prohibited, depends on who you're talking to. If you go into very orthodox environments, some of these restrictions are maintained. But with the exception, with setting those, I think those are the exception rather than, they're the holdout. They're holding on to archaic traditions. You know, we'll leave this behind in just a moment, but just something, I've said this before, allow me to share it with you again. People have tremendous respect for these religious and spiritual traditions. I would like to suggest that not everything that is old is good. Traditional means old. So this tradition of excluding women, for example, from reciting Vedas is thousands of years old. I'd like to suggest that just because a tradition is old doesn't make it good. And the example many of you have heard me give before, old is not good. For example, think of the milk in your refrigerator. Old doesn't equal good. The value depends on the thing itself. What makes these mantras powerful is not their antiquity. Okay, enough said. One more question. This question from Stuart, who lives in New York. Stuart asks, in a previous satsang we discussed how different Vedanta traditions, I mentioned before the tradition of Advaita, the tradition I teach, the tradition of Vishishta Advaita that Ramanuja teaches, the tradition of Dvaita, which Madhva teaches, and then there are sub-traditions, the tradition of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, there's one Shuddha Advaita, there are a lot of these teachings. And in that discussion, I think the question back then was, do they all teach this? They're all based on the same Vedas. Why are they teaching such different things? And I've somehow in that, I don't remember entirely the context. But I do remember that all of them have moksha as the goal. So followers of Vishishta Dvaita, Dvaita and Advaita Vedanta all seek moksha. But this is a point I made then. But they define moksha differently. Moksha means liberation. Liberation from what? Liberation from suffering. So in Madhva's and Ramanuja's system, you gain liberation by living a pious life now, and by gaining certain realizations in this lifetime, by removing that veil of ignorance in this lifetime, so that you don't get reborn, or so that you go to a heavenly realm. So in Madhva's teachings, it would be going to heaven. In Ramanuja's tradition, it would be so you don't get reborn. So, in fact, we had a very similar question before, and that was, notice that these traditions address the problem of suffering later, not while you're alive. Advaita Vedanta is unique in addressing not to avoid suffering after you die. Those people, according to the doctrine of karma, you're going to get reborn again and again and again. My gosh, how much future suffering lies in the head for you. So to become freed from that cycle of birth and rebirth, suffering and suffering more. So definitely you want to come out of that. Madhva says you can follow this tradition and you can go to heavenly realm. Ramanuja says you can dissolve into Ishvara and you don't have to be reborn. What Shankaracharya says is you can be free from suffering here and now. by recognizing your true nature as Satchidananda Atma. So, to finish Stuart's question, it seems to me that one common element of all them is elimination of suffering. It is a common element, elimination of suffering. Is this correct? It's correct that they're all about eliminating suffering. If that's so, in your opinion, can we consider them valid paths for elimination of suffering? I've made the distinction. The distinction between the elimination of suffering now, while you're alive, and elimination of suffering after you're dead. And let me just end with this one more observation, and that is, there's a huge difference between the two. The difference is this. How do you know if your spiritual practice will guarantee that you will go to heaven or that you won't be reborn? How do you know for sure? By the way, our Christian friends struggle with this one for endlessly. They ask, how do I know if I am saved? They say, through faith alone. How do I know if my faith is strong enough to prevent me from going to eternal hell? How do I know? What do you tell that poor Christian? How to know? You die, only then you find out. Well, you see the point that these traditions of Vishishta Advaita and Dvaita kind of have the same problem. You don't really know. And what sets Advaita Vedanta apart is you can verify in this lifetime, in your own experience, if these teachings work, you will discover in your own life that suffering decreases, 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 and finally, gone. It is verifiable in this lifetime, which is a unique feature of Advaita Vedanta. All right, good questions. We'll conclude with our prayers. Om sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet, asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityor ma amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. See you next time.